We obliterated facilities, but obviously they retained nuclear material, and they also, and I think the key issue is...
Isn't that relevant? I mean, if that's the... I think that's my follow-up to what you said earlier was all of those military objectives, it seems plausible that they can be achieved in this moment. But if you have a regime that is fundamentally more radicalized and aimed at the same things as they were before, it's just a matter of time. It seems like it's a matter of time before they rearm.
In today's video, Abby Phillip stops the show to silence Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip. This debate gets heated pretty quickly because it goes straight to a question a lot of Americans are asking right now. What exactly is the strategy with Iran? On one side, Abby Phillip presses Scott Jennings on the conflicting messages coming out of the administration. The president has suggested the conflict is almost over, while defense officials and military leaders are saying the campaign is just getting started. Those two things can't both be true, and that's where the confusion begins. So let's dive in and watch how Abby Phillip shuts down Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
Hegseth's Department of War echoed that statement, writing on social media just hours before Trump spoke, "We have only just begun to fight." And if you're keeping track of all the various reasons why the Trump administration decided to go to war with Iran, the president offered up a new justification today.
Iran's a very powerful country. They were going to take over the Middle East. If we did not hit them, they were going to take over the Middle East. They had thousands and thousands since their last hit. They had thousands and thousands of missiles and everything else.
What are the American people supposed to believe, Marc?
Look, I think the American people should know that for 47 years, Iran's been trying to attack Americans and Westerners. For 47 years, they've launched attacks on Marines in Lebanon. They've funded Hezbollah. They funded Hamas. And so I think they should know the president is committed to trying to demilitarize Iran and take away the offensive capability they had.
But don't they deserve real answers about where this war is right now, where it's headed, how long it may be, what the military objectives are, how close we are to reaching those objectives, any of that?
I think some of the objectives could be clear, and I think one thing that would be helpful is if the administration had fewer people speaking on their behalf. I think that would help keep the messaging simpler. But I don't know that there is confusion as to where we are in this offensive, Abby. I think that we've clearly eliminated the Navy for Iran. We've clearly eliminated the Air Force. We've taken away a lot of their offensive capabilities. And so I think there is still a question of, like, what is the long-term mission here? But I think there's not a question about what's been happening thus far.
I think Marc is right that this administration has taken incredible military action to eliminate Iran's naval capabilities, air defenses, I mean, you name it. But I think the president is also trying to have it both ways and saying that we've eliminated all of these military capabilities, and yet we have to continue to go on because they pose such a threat. Where, last year in June, you heard this administration take a winning lap saying that we've destroyed and obliterated all their military capabilities. So I think you're hearing conflicting messages because no one can also get on the same page and have the same picture of where Iran actually is.
And to that point, I mean, the president said, you heard him saying that Iran was about to take over the Middle East had they not struck. But here's what the rest of his administration has been saying over the last few weeks and over the last year. Listen.
That regime is probably weaker than it has ever been.
This president sees the threat plainly and acts decisively. No more half measures, especially when Iran is at its weakest.
This is the weakest they've ever been. Now is the time to go after them.
The reason President Trump went now is because they're at their weakest point.
So look, I mean, I guess the real question is, why not just tell the truth? I mean, if the truth is what Marc said, which is that Iran is a nuisance, we decided to take them out regardless of the immediate threat that they posed in this moment, why not just say that and then also tell us what you want to see at the end of the day?
Now, historically, when US administrations go to war, they usually present a clear doctrine or objective. Think about the Gulf War in 1991. The goal was explicitly defined as removing Iraqi forces from Kuwait. After 9/11, the initial objective in Afghanistan was targeting Al-Qaeda and dismantling its safe havens. Whether people later agreed with those wars or not, the public at least understood what the stated mission was. Here, the messaging seems to bounce between different justifications. Sometimes the explanation focuses on Iran's nuclear ambitions. Other times, it's about Iran's missile capabilities, regional influence, or preventing them from dominating the Middle East. When the rationale keeps shifting, it naturally raises questions about what the actual long-term goal is. Another important piece of context is the nuclear deal that existed before this escalation. Under the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, Iran significantly reduced its enriched uranium stockpile, dismantled thousands of centrifuges, and allowed extensive international inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Multiple international monitoring reports confirmed Iran was complying with the agreement for several years before the US withdrew in 2018. After that withdrawal and the reimposition of sanctions, Iran gradually restarted parts of its nuclear program. That history matters because it shows how complicated the current situation really is. Military action can damage facilities or degrade capabilities, but intelligence officials and defense experts have long warned that airstrikes alone rarely eliminate a country's nuclear knowledge or technological base. Even Israel's strike on Iraq's Osirak reactor in 1981 delayed Iraq's program, but it didn't erase the expertise behind it.
He wants to see a more compliant, more pliable regime, and he doesn't seem to be getting that. Let me just play what a senior Iranian official told CNN this week in an interview.
I don't see any room for diplomacy anymore. Iranian military is quite strong, as you see, because they have the motivation, they have the arms that they need, which are produced in Iran. As a matter of fact, we are not dependent on any other country for weapons and arms.
So there's that. There's the fact that Ali Khamenei's son is a hardliner, has been appointed as the new supreme leader. On the political side of things, are we going to then not meet the president's own objectives, which is to have an Iran that he can work with, an Iran that's doing what he wants them to do?
Well, I mean, what does he want them to do? He wants them to not have nuclear weapons. He wants them to not have a ballistic missile program. He wants them to not have an aggressive navy, and he wants them to not be an exporter of terrorism around the world. Now, whatever happens to the next regime, I don't know, but I know this: we will not permit them to do any of those things. The nuclear piece, to me, is the most important. You cannot have a nuclear-armed Iran. They showed up at the negotiations with Witkoff and said, oh, well, we've got enough material to make 11 nuclear weapons. Well, I think having them described as ultimately being compliant or someone you can work with, I don't think that's the vector. What you have to understand about these people is that they're fanatics. They would like to bring about the end of the world by causing a nuclear war that brings in, you know, the religious piece of this for them. So they're not going to ever be compliant about that. They have this worldview. We have to take away their capacity to enact that worldview, which is, to me, why the nuclear piece is a vital issue. You cannot have them sitting out there with any material.
For now,
we're talking,
but
I mean,
then
I
what?
think we're talking about the leadership of Iran. We're talking about the individuals who, the ones you were referring to, because I actually agree with everybody at the table. I know this is a show where we come on and we're supposed to, you know, have our differing opinions and probably climb across the table. But the facts are this. We had an Iran nuclear deal, which, however you feel about it, Iran was not closer to a nuclear weapon when that deal was in place than when Donald Trump tore it up. We know that. I mean, Barack Obama actually went out and actually negotiated with these people and had an Iran nuclear deal. And now we're talking about, we have 6 soldiers, 6 people.
7 now.
7 who have died. Nobody's mentioned that yet. We have 7 people. And the part about it that drives the American public crazy is they don't know why. They're afraid of having another Afghanistan. They're afraid of having another Iraq. I mean, you can't.
It's been 1 week.
Well,
It's literally been 1 week.
I would like to add on to Scott's point, though.
But why is that?
Scott actually is right. I agree with Scott on the nuclear program.
Why do we minimize that?
What really stands out in this exchange is the disconnect between the scale of the military action and the clarity of the strategy behind it. Bakari is pointing towards something that has historically been a basic rule of warfare. You define the objective first, then you figure out how to achieve it. Even the US military doctrine emphasizes that the concept of ends, ways, and means. The goal comes first. If the end goal isn't clearly communicated, everything else starts to feel improvised. And that concern isn't theoretical. The United States has been through this before. When the Iraq War began in 2003, the stated objective was eliminating weapons of mass destruction. When those weren't found, the mission shifted toward regime change and nation building. That mission creep ended up costing the US trillions of dollars and years of military involvement. Afghanistan followed a similar pattern, starting with a clear objective of targeting Al-Qaeda and eventually evolving into a 2-decade-long war trying to stabilize the country politically. That's why the nuclear deal Bakari mentioned matters in this context. Under the 2015 agreement, Iran agreed to cap uranium enrichment levels, reduce centrifuges, and allow inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency. For several years, those inspections verified compliance. After the US withdrew from the deal in 2018, Iran gradually began expanding its enrichment again. So when people ask why now in terms of military escalation, it's not just a political talking point. It's about understanding how policy decisions over the past decade shaped the current situation.
But I think Scott makes, and like we've been talking about this, like the nuclear program is something that everyone is concerned about. But an air campaign alone is not going to get at the nuclear program.
I mean,
actually
we didn't
get
obliterate
to the issue.
we did not obliterate their nuclear program.
I completely agree with you on that.
No, we obliterated facilities. But obviously, they retained nuclear material, and they also, and I think the key issue is,
isn't that relevant? I mean, if that's I think that's my follow-up to what you said earlier was, all of those military objectives, it seems plausible that they can be achieved in this moment. But if you have a regime that is fundamentally more radicalized and aimed at the same things as they were before, it's just a matter of time. It seems like it's a matter of time before they rearm, before they reconstitute their missile program or their drone program or their nuclear program. And so are we just deferring this?
I mean, we could be. I think that, look, Israel has been mowing the grass, as they call it. It's kind of an unpleasant phrase, but it's like, you look at the problem set, and if it pops up, whack-a-mole, you whack it down again, right? That's been the path that we're on. And so here's where I hear the president this afternoon talking. He says, if we're not going to change this regime, we might as well just get rid of it once and for all. And so there is an issue that, we've waded into this war of choice, a war of choice. It was not a threat. I completely disagree with the president that the United States' immediate interests were at threat at this moment. I do not agree with that. But, here we are. And I think that this is something that we all have to grapple with. What is the threat? Is it better to keep mowing the grass? I think that maybe in the long run it is, because I think that Iran will not have the missile capability to strike us. Iran will not have the nuclear capability to strike us. And we can watch and see whether it reconstitutes. Should we be doing a deal with the devil? This is a question Americans should be answering.
I don't know.
And I think it's complicated.
I think it's hard to say that there's not a threat when just a couple years ago they slaughtered thousands of Israelis. They continue to fund the terrorist attacks on Westerners.
Sure.
And that has not stopped. So to say they're not a threat, I don't agree.
I guess asymmetric threat, but they're not going to have missiles to do what they were doing.
They're not bad actors.
Because they're taken care of.
But hold on, nobody's suggesting that they're not bad actors. I think the question is the bar for the United States to engage in offensive military action is a threat to us on the homeland. And I do think that that's what has always been in question. That's why the administration itself, at the beginning, tried to make it sound like there was an imminent threat when there wasn't. They
What's the end game? I mean, I guess my question to Marc and Scott is so we all agree on Iran not being a great actor, to say the least, right? Over the last 47 years, as you articulated very clearly when you opened up, I mean, Iran has just funded terrorism. I mean, they are a bad actor on the world stage. They are a threat to our greatest ally in Israel in the middle. Like I agree with you wholeheartedly. But what we're not getting, and one of the reasons why I wish Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump actually went to Congress so we could have this debate. Like, that's why you do it. And I think they would have actually been more successful than they would have guessed.
Or used his State of the Union to outline.
But what is
to telegraph to the enemy that we were coming?
Did that anyway.
Yeah,
but my point is,
building an armada.
What is the?
That's telegraphed.
How do we get out of this? And my last question is, how do we make sure 7's not 14 or 21 or 700? What's the cost?
When do we?
History shows that air campaigns alone rarely eliminate nuclear programs. We've seen this before. Israel bombed Iraq's Osirak reactor in 1981 and Syria's Al-Kibar reactor in 2007. Those strikes destroyed facilities, but they didn't erase the scientific knowledge or the ability to rebuild. Nuclear experts have pointed out for years that bombing infrastructure might set a program back a few years, but it doesn't eliminate the capability entirely. That's why diplomacy and inspections have often been part of the strategy, not just military pressure. And when you look at the Iran nuclear deal from 2015, whatever people's opinions about it politically, the International Atomic Energy Agency repeatedly confirmed that Iran had reduced its enriched uranium stockpile and allowed international inspections for several years. After the US withdrew from the agreement in 2018, Iran gradually resumed enrichment activities. That timeline matters because it shows how the current situation didn't just appear overnight. It's the result of a series of policy decisions over the last decade, and the financial side of this rarely gets discussed enough. Military operations in the Middle East have already cost American taxpayers enormous amounts of money. The Brown University Costs of War project estimates that the US has spent over $8 trillion on wars in the Middle East and related operations since 2001. That's money funded largely through federal taxes and borrowing. Every new escalation means more defense spending, more deployments, and potentially more long-term costs for veterans' care and equipment replacement. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.